I'm actually going to be doing something different. I literally just had an awakening probably about yesterday. It's been an awakening in the making, in a sense of I've been struggling with an identity crisis, not in a sense that I don't know who I am. Like I truly know who I am as a believer in Christ and as a son of Christ, but more in a professional way. I started my business about 8 years ago trying to unify people, but in doing so, I feel like I have beat around the bush in many different ways because in fear of getting canceled and fear of not touching on some of the more difficult topics. And all of this stuff was kind of spearheading until yesterday. And yesterday I watched a film that really, it challenged me and it convicted me. It challenged me because a lot of the things that I've been raised to believe, it made me think of it from a different lens. And it doesn't make it to where the things that I learned as a young kid doesn't say that all that stuff is wrong and false and I should have never believed it. But it just made me look at it from a different angle. It was more of this idea of like, I saw the good, the bad, and the ugly. And I think throughout life, I've always been looking at it from one angle, when yesterday it was like, wow, like I never saw it from this perspective. And that movie I'm talking about is Uncle Tom 2. And so a lot of you guys are going to be challenged today in today's episode of the podcast, especially if you're black. I'm just going to call it what it is. If you're black, this is going to challenge you. If you're white, it's going to equally be beneficial for you, no matter what race. For example, as I was raised, and I'll talk about this a little bit later, but as I was raised in a Democratic household. And mind you, I love my parents. My parents did a phenomenal job raising me and my siblings. But I've always said it takes a village to raise a child, and everybody in my village did a phenomenal job raising me and my family. But I was raised in a Democratic household. Now, this podcast today is not about being Democrat or Republican. But what it is I've gone through a journey throughout my life that has forced me to think critically and actually have to ask myself, why am I Democrat? Which, am I Democrat anymore? No, I'm not. At least I don't vote Democrat. I don't. I'll tell you here in a little bit, I don't like to identify with Democrat, Republican, or Independent. I vote a certain way, but I don't like to identify with that because I think identities contribute to this idea of identity crisis. I really do. And when you don't have an identity found in God, now you're always searching, okay, am I black? Am I a police officer? Am I this? Am I Republican? Am I Democrat? And you go around whirlwind and you're always trying to appease everybody. And I'm tired of appeasing people. It's just what it comes down to. But it wasn't until I started doing my own research, when I start truly not just being a hearer of the word, of the gospel of Jesus Christ, but actually being a doer of the word, that's when things started shifting for me. That's when things literally start shifting for me. I was doing a devotion last week in the book of James, and in the book of James, it talks about you have to be a doer of the word, not just a hearer of the word. Somebody who is a hearer of the word, they're like a person that goes to look into a mirror, and when they walk away, they forget what they look like. That's what a hearer of the word is. So when I said, look, I want to be an active Christian, like an active believer in the word of God, that what's in the Bible, this isn't the Bible, but what's in the Bible, I have to go out there and start changing my life. And when I start changing my life, it came with certain things like, should you be voting this way? So again, today's episode is not about being Republican or Democrat, but today's episode is about challenging you. It's about convicting you. And it's about you standing up for what's right, because all of the research and information that you've gotten to your conclusion is because you believe it's right, not because somebody else believes it right and you just like that person. Because I think that's the society we live in. I think it's right because this person says it's right, and so therefore I'm going to go ahead and do this because they think it's right. No, I want you to start measuring, do your own checks and balances. Spend time with the people that aren't like you. Spend time with the people that don't look like you and don't talk like you. Spend time with those other people, and then at the end of the day, compare it back to whatever your truth is. For me, it's the Bible. Compare it back to those things, and when you compare it back to those things, that's why you form the conclusion of why you are the person you are. Why you do what you do. This next segment of the podcast depending on who listens to it, will probably piss a lot of people off. This next segment of this podcast will probably, I've risked the fact that some people not liking me anymore. I risk the fact that some people saying they don't want to follow me anymore. This next section of this podcast, there's going to be people that say, you've really, really gone off the deep end. But honestly, when I started making content for one reason and one reason alone: to educate people, to add value to other people, to bring people together. That's the reason why I started creating content. And over the last year or so, I feel like my content has become mundane, that I'm just making content for the sake of making content. Now, don't get me wrong. I know it's adding value. I have people come up to me all the time and tell me how much they appreciate the work I'm doing with the content I put out. But I feel like I'm not leaving it all on the field. I feel like I'm not doing what I've been called to do, truly been called to do. And what I've been called to do is to educate, but also educate with truth and bring people together. And for the first time ever, I'm saying this publicly. I don't think I've ever said this publicly before. It was very hard for me from a political standpoint to come out as a black man and say that I don't align politically with most other black people. For the first time. Now, some of you guys, again, are going to write me off and say, oh, this dude's gone off the deep end. And I'm not even here to tell you that one way is better than the other, because if you ask me, I think politics in general is very divisive. Republican, Democrat, I think is very, very divisive. But I remember that the moment I had, the awakening I had when I said, I actually align more as a conservative than I do with liberal philosophies. I felt almost ashamed that I couldn't say it openly. I felt ashamed that I couldn't talk openly about why I felt this way. And the reason I started to feel this way was not because other people were telling me, hey, you need to be conservative. The reason I was feeling this way was wasn't because other people were saying, hey, you know what? The more money you make, you should be able to keep it, and you need to have this capitalistic mentality. No, that's not why I started to feel that way. I started to feel that way because, like I told you at the beginning of this episode today, we have to measure everything up with truth. And for me, my truth is found in Christ. So the way I measure my truth up comes back to the Bible. And when I read my Bible more, and as I started to get closer to God, and as I started to really focus on not just, listening to scripture and what people told me about God, when I start focusing on being more of a doer of the word, that's when I start realizing that more of my value system aligns with more conservatives. Now, again, I want you to be clear and hear me on this. This doesn't mean that I am a Republican, because my ideas and my philosophies, I believe, are not rooted in a specific identity. Yeah, I may vote one way over the other, but that is not my identity. My identity is not a Republican. My identity is not a Democrat. My identity is not an independent. My identity is found in Christ. I just vote this way because the way of this system, or the way I feel based on the Bible, my values align more with this side than this side. But that made me feel so terrible. I couldn't even talk to anybody about that because they would cast me out and call me an Uncle Tom. No pun intended, because that's where I'm getting ready to go. But they will call me Uncle Tom. They will call me a coon. They will call me a sellout. And so when I say I've been having this identity crisis for over a year and a half, I feel like I've been dancing around and skating on ice because in fear of I'm going to be counseled, in fear that they're going to counsel me the moment I say how I feel. But you know what? I had this awakening yesterday, and I realized that, look, I can tell every single one of you guys how I feel. I can tell every single one of you guys what my value system is. But if I do it the right way, and if I do it God's way, I don't have to worry about people counseling me. So what's my point? Where am I going with this? Where I'm going with this is that I watched a documentary yesterday called Uncle Tom 2. And Uncle Tom 2 was a very, very eye-opening documentary. And like I said, when I was younger, I was raised to know about my history. I was raised to know about Martin Luther King and Rosa Parks and Malcolm X and all these different people. And I was raised to learn about all of the adversity that they had to overcome. But I think in our society, I think we've also hidden a lot of our history as well when it comes to being black in America, or even just American history. We've hidden a lot of those things because there are two battles at play right here that we don't recognize. And again, I'm always going to go back to the spiritual side. Not only do we wrestle with flesh and blood, which is the physicality, the here and now, like me being here in the present, there's a battle going on with me and my neighbor a lot of time, like me and my brother. But there's also a wrestle against spirits and principalities that rule this earth. And so I truly believe that, you either believe in God or you don't. And if you don't believe in God, essentially you are susceptible to a lot of demonic things that are in play right now in our world. And what I watched in Uncle Tom 2 was very eye-opening in a sense of it shows why people are so divided. It brought up Karl Marx and Marxism. When we talk about BLM and what BLM actually was, BLM was founded by three women who will tell you that their ideologies were founded in being a trained Marxist. One of the things that's interesting about being a Marxist, let me show this to you. Now, there's a lot of principles about being a Marxist that are very, very important. And the reason why I think this is important is because, again, you have to educate yourself, train yourself, like go out there and learn. But one of the things, there's about 6 different principles when it comes to being a Marxist. But this is one of the ones that stood out to me the most was communisms. Karl Marx envisioned a future where there was no private ownership and wealth is shared based on needs rather than profit. That's what you call communism. Some of you guys might look at me and say, well, what's the problem with that? It should be fair. Everything should be fair. We should all have this equal distribution of wealth and things like that. But the issue with that is that means that lazy people can continue to be lazy and get get what everybody else wants. That means that I shouldn't have to work hard and I can go out there and get whatever everybody else has because I don't work hard. Do you see the issues with that? That basically is we're basically teaching our children to be mediocre. We're basically teaching our children to not go out and work hard. We're teaching our children that you can be lazy and still get what everybody else has. One of the things that's made our country so strong is our ability to be strong and go out there and have a hard work ethic and work for what we have, and everything that we have, we've worked hard for. But now we're conditioning our society, we're conditioning our children to go out there and don't do anything, just live and be happy, and everything should be given to you. My mom and dad didn't raise me like that. My mom and dad raised me to be a hard working man. Take care of your family, protect your wife, protect your kids, go to church. That's how my parents raised me. But yet we are allowing our standards to be lowered in our country. So one of the things that stood out in this movie or this documentary of Uncle Tom 2 was who this man that I always looked up to, but I didn't really understand the nature of what he did for the African American community, Booker T. Washington. And one of the things that he did for our community was just amazing. His philosophy, his idea. So I want to play this clip for you real quick. It comes from the movie Uncle Tom 2. I'm going to talk about it more. I'm going to expand upon it more. And I'm going to kind of start wrapping this thing up of what my awakening is and what I'm going to start focusing more on and why I'm getting into a little bit more of the politics and my values and things like that. So let's play the clip. Let's watch.
He was influencing people to take advantage of their own lives. Do the best with what they had.
Getting out there and working hard and earning things on your own.
Be an entrepreneur. Start your own business. Build your community.
We need to look to ourselves. We need to transform from within.
He urged black people to set your bucket where you are and make your success right there where you are.
Cast down your bucket where you are. A third and fourth speaker. For Walker was that. Cast down your bucket where you are. Captain of the first person, last Indian country. Cast down your bucket.
It is said that necessity
is the mother of invention. The need to have goods and products available to us in our community, entrepreneurs came up. Black stores, black doctors and dentists and other professionals established their business, influenced by a Judeo-Christian ethic that says if you don't work, you don't eat. A Judeo-Christian ethic that talked about the father to be the provider and to take care of the family. Innovation and creativity produced the kind of responsiveness that we see take place. Texas, Georgia, Atlanta was bustling. Oklahoma.
No one ever loses anything by being a gentleman or a lady. No person ever lost anything by being broad. Remember that if we are kind and useful, if we are moral, no matter what people say about us, they cannot pull us down. But on the other hand, if we are without the spirit of usefulness, if we are without morality, without economy and property, without all those qualities which go to make a people and a nation great and strong, no matter what we say about ourselves, we are losing ground. Nobody can give us these qualities merely by praising us and talking well about us. And when we possess them, nobody can take them from us by speaking ill of us.
When you look,
I get fired up just watching that. Booker T. Washington, put down your bucket where you are. That is one of the most profound things that I've ever actually heard in my conquest for understanding my history. Put down your bucket where you are. Drop your bucket where you are. A little bit of context about Booker T. Washington. Booker T. Washington was born into slavery. He was born into slavery. This man lived on a plantation and got out of slavery. If there's anybody in our world, in our history's past, that could have been angry at the white man, that could have been angry at the adversity he had to go through because he was a slave, could have been Booker T. Washington. I know there's many more. And there's going to be some people that take what I have to say out of context. It just comes with the territory. But this is the revelation I got yesterday when I watched this film. Booker T. Washington didn't teach this mentality of victimhood. He didn't teach this idea of being a victim. He said, you know what? As opposed to going against the person that oppressed me, I'm going to drop my bucket right where it's at and I'm going to start to build. I've gotten out of slavery. And it says that some of the greatest inventions come out of a place of necessity. You see, the thing that makes all of us equal is the fact that, for the most part, all of us have been given 2 hands, 2 feet, the ability to speak, 2 eyes, 2 ears. And even those that weren't blessed with some of these things that I've just mentioned, even they have still been able to overcome. That's what true equal opportunity looks like. So we can sit here all day and blame the system and say the system this and, the system that, and they have these advantages because of this, or we can drop our bucket right where we're at and start to work hard. That's what we can do. So as I watched this documentary yesterday, it really convicted me because I'm so, focused on trying to bring people together. But in doing so, I'm just embracing this idea. I'm embracing this idea of just be mediocre. As long as everybody is just leave everybody alone and everybody. I'm embracing this idea of mediocrity. And I can't do that. You know why? Because I go into schools, I travel all across the country, and I look at students right now that are embracing this idea of mediocrity. We're allowing other people to tell us that I should be a victim because I'm black. We're allowing other people to tell us that I'm not capable because I'm black. And I'm tired of that. I'm honestly tired of that. I was raised with 2 great parents and 2 great sisters and a whole big family, like I've told you many times. And right now, I am living a life that in many eyes would say, well, that's not a realistic lifestyle. One of my phrases that I've often used, I've gotten from my boy, Cameron Bynum, who plays for the Minnesota Vikings, but he says, my life is a movie. He says, my life is a movie. And the reason he says my life is a movie is because he's a starter with the Minnesota Vikings, and the life that he lives is not a quote unquote realistic lifestyle. But I challenge people to say, why is it not realistic? Because we've adopted this mentality that I should not be able to be successful. I should not be able to go here because of the color of my skin. But it is realistic if you work hard, and if you drop your bucket right where you're at, it is realistic. And so we've adopted this idea of mediocrity, and we allow our kids to go out there and talk to people however they want to talk to and do whatever they want to. But if you listen to the end of that documentary, the short segment that I played, if you're nice to people, if you're courteous to people, if you're respectful to people, you will have more people that are willing to help you out than people that are willing to shove you down in the ground. That's just the reality of it. Even on police stops. If you get pulled over by a police officer and you are nice to that officer, if you're courteous to that officer, if you're respectful to that officer, you are more willing to be let go and even maybe not even get a ticket than you are to have force used against you. But yet we promote this idea of the man is coming against us and the man is pushing us down, and therefore you fight back against the man and this and that and all this. That's a victim mentality. And I don't want to raise our children to be victims. One of the things that makes us so strong as a nation is that we are a nation made up of so many different cultures. People that bring value from all over the world, from Asia, from Africa, from France, from Spain, wherever. That's what's made America strong, but yet the very thing that's made us strong is also the very thing that's dividing us. Because we all look at each other as being divided. You don't understand what I'm going through because you're not this race. The very thing that's made us strong as a nation is the very thing that's dividing us. So I'm tired of standing on the sidelines and just being acceptive of everything. I'm tired of standing on the sidelines and being I am not going to be acceptive of mediocrity. I'm not going to be acceptive of that. I'm not going to be acceptive of people saying that, you know what, you can't do this because you're black. I'm tired of that. My awakening is that, look, if we want to succeed and thrive as a people, we have to rise above that. We have to rise above that. We have to stop being lazy, get research, do research, educate yourself. Stop letting other people educate you. I'm not going to live in this place of fear anymore of getting counseled. I'm not. So I come back to, like I said, as I get ready to wrap this thing up. And if you guys haven't watched Uncle Tom 2, you should. It is very, very eye-opening. Very, very eye-opening. But the man I am today is not the man that I was yesterday. The man I am today has learned to think for myself, which I truly believe that at the end of the day, that's what my mom and dad wanted for me to do, is learn how to think for myself. Even though there was philosophies and ideas of why they thought the way they thought and why they thought the things that they thought, at the end of the day, I think what every parent wants for their kids is for their kids to follow God, to make sure they're moral and ethically sound, but at the end of the day, be able to be a critical thinker, get educated, and think for yourself. And I think it's because of that that's made me able to think outside the box. And for my reason and for my ability to think outside the box and to push back on certain topics and stuff like that, that's why I've been called a coon. That's why I've been called an Uncle Tom and all these other things. But you know what? I don't care. I don't care. And some of the people that might call me that, I'll still be cool with you. It is what it is. I'm not tripping. I do a presentation all the time about conflict resolution. And it's about that very thing. It's like, look, we can learn how to agree to disagree. That is an art that has been lost, agreeing to disagree. There's so many different arts that we have lost over the years that I think if we got back to those principles, that's what's going to protect us from having civil war. learning how to agree to disagree, learning how to love our brothers and sisters, learning how to embrace our differences, learning how to understand to drop your bucket where it's at and work hard. You see, in a Marxist communist mentality, in a communist society, everybody is supposed to be treated as equals, which honestly, if you don't go out there and work hard and do those different things, should you be treated equal? Think about that. If you don't work hard as your brother or sister, should you be treated as an equal? Now, don't get me wrong. It doesn't mean that you don't have grace and mercy for the person who doesn't have what you have. But should that person be treated equally if they're not willing to go out there and bust their butt, if they're not willing to go out there and rise against adversity, if they're not willing to put their life on the line, if they're not willing to go out there and overcome situations that come against them? If they want to just sit back and twiddle their thumbs and not go through some of the things, why should they be treated equally? And I know that's going to be controversial for many people. I'm not saying we go out there and treat them less than. I'm not saying we go out there and don't give them anything or don't help them out. I'm not saying that. But what I am saying is that if we adopt this idea that everybody should be on one playing field and nobody should have more than the other, then that's a mediocre mentality that's going to lead to our demise. What's made America strong, what's made our country strong is our ability to work hard, is our ability to overcome. It's our ability to find solutions when there's needs. We need to get back to those principles. So for me, what am I going to do? I'm, as you guys can see, I'm passionate, I'm convicted. That's what I'm going to start to do. I'm going to start addressing more issues. I'll start getting a little bit more into some of the political conversations and stuff like that. I'll give you my opinions, and my opinions alone based on, obviously, number one, the Bible, but two, what I've kind of just learned off my training experience. But again, I challenge you, don't take my word because I have a K behind the number of followers. Don't take my word because I was a police officer or I am a police officer. I love you guys. I thank you so much. This is going to be a phenomenal year. We're going to have guests. I want to have some polarizing guests that come on this show. We're going to have people from the far left. We're going to have people from the far right. And we're going to figure out ways that we could all meet in the middle and try to find ways that we can unify ourselves. Make sure you guys go watch Uncle Tom 2. If you guys haven't done so already, make sure you guys subscribe to my channel. It truly means the world to me. Go follow all my pages, Breaking Barriers United on Instagram, TikTok, you name it. With that being said, I love you. I want to know what you guys think in the comment section below. Take care, and I'll see you guys on the next episode.